Hello and welcome to episode 203 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is August 6th, and together with Robert and Goran, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So a few months ago, SAP had announced the end of maintenance of the SAP Identity Management solution in 2027 or 2030 with extended maintenance. This announcement resulted in a lot of feedback from customers, and Michael Friedrich from SAP stated in a blog post that Microsoft and SAP are actively collaborating to develop guidance that enables customers to migrate their identity management scenarios from SAP Identity Management to Microsoft Entra ID. Since then, we've been very busy. We not only worked closely together between SAP and Microsoft, but we also reached out to DSAG and asked the IDM community for help and advice. To tell you a little more about what we have been doing, where we are, and what's going to happen in the next few months, I'm glad to have a great team of colleagues here. Jannis Rondorf, the head of the SAP IDM working group at DSAG, and two Microsoft colleagues with Wahl and Martin Raepple with us, and from SAP, Chris Radkowski. So before we dive into the topics, let's start with a quick round of introduction. Jannis, maybe we can start with you.
Thank you, Holger. As Holger said, my name is Jannis Rondorf. I'm from a partner company, SAP partner Itesis in Switzerland. And I was working for SAP 15 years between 1999 and 2015. Also doing development in IDM and also leading the program of identity management. Thank you.
Great to have you. Thank you very much for joining, Jannis. Chris.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Radkowski. I'm a solution owner at SAP. I've been at SAP for 16 years. Time flies quickly. But before that, I was also involved with several other startups in the same space around single sign-on, identity management, access control, and so forth.
Perfect. Well, great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, over to you.
Yes. Hello, I'm Mark Wahl. I'm with Microsoft. I'm a product architect for Microsoft Entra. I've been at Microsoft for about 16 years. Before that, I was at numerous small companies, startup. Probably I've competed with Chris at some point in my career. I just can't remember all the details for that. But I've been doing identity and security for about 30 years, and we're really excited to be bringing together some of the key capabilities we're doing here at Microsoft with those from my colleagues at SAP.
Thank you so much, Mark. And Martin, I guess a lot of our viewers, listeners know you already, but maybe you can quickly also introduce yourself again.
Thanks, Holger. Yeah, and thank you again for having me on the show again. Martin Raepple. Not as long as Mark in the identity and access management business, only for 20 years or so. So before joining Microsoft around 5 years ago, I spent most of my business life at SAP, also in the area of identity and access management, mainly in the business technology platform space as a product owner there for the security services. And now I'm at Microsoft in a role of a technical specialist, taking care for SAP as Microsoft's customer and also dealing a lot with identity and access management topics, such as presented here on this YouTube channel a lot around single sign-on and principal propagation, Teams integration scenarios, etc. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And I mean, your blog posts and everything that you do is extremely well received by customers and partners. I think all the was it a 6-part or 7-part series of your single sign-on between Microsoft and SAP? I think that is a huge hit. But now we want to talk about something different. So maybe you can kick us off. Maybe you can talk a little about what are we actually doing here?
So as you already introduced, Holger, I mean, there was this announcement made in January or February at the DSAG Technologietage. Well, since then, yeah, we basically started to collaborate a lot on providing mainly guidance to SAP IDM customers. That resulted so far in quite a number of publications in the format of blog posts, documentation in the official product documentations. And we will take a look at those, I think, in the next minutes, a little bit closer. We also done quite a lot in terms of information sessions, rollout sessions, mainly collaborating here with Jannis on the DSAG events. There were already 2 events, happened one in June and the last one just a few weeks ago in end of July around the DSAG info Tage. And I think as an DSAG member, you can always look at the recordings, right, Jannis? I think the recordings are available. And in addition to that, the slides. So we try to educate our joint customers here a little bit around Entra ID and Entra ID governance, specifically about its capabilities. We also started to collaborate with a few pilot customers already, also trying to understand from our perspective what migration means and how to and to which extent SAP IDM customers are using the product in terms of its customization features and options. So I think this plays an important role in also estimating the efforts for migration to Entra. We also plan to or have already planned for additional sessions, such as, for example, at SAP TechEd, I think, which will be this year a purely virtual event, but nevertheless, we also will have a session there to talk about the already published content and also our plans for the future to provide further guidance. So, and maybe with that, I will hand over to Mark to give us a little bit more insights into the existing documentation for that Microsoft published so far, or maybe starting here with the blog post from Michael Friedrich on the announcement and a general overview, architectural overview. So over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Martin. So as Martin mentioned, there were blog posts that were put out at the time of the SAP IDM deprecation. And then since then, we've also seen blog posts on both the SAP community and the Microsoft Tech community blogs with further updates. So here, just for reference, we have a blog post here from Michael Friedrich on the SAP side. We have a corresponding blog post again from our marketing team at Microsoft. Both of these blog posts link to the same technical content. And that technical content, you'll get the link as well, aka.ms, migrate from SAP IDM. And what that takes you over to is our content that we're putting up on the Microsoft site that walks through scenarios that customers have been using SAP IDM for, and then showing how do you achieve that scenario with newer or the new modern integrations between Microsoft and SAP. So within this document, which is, again, still evolving, you'll see kind of an overview. What are the scenarios and what is the overall integration approach? How do we see customers thinking about the role of Microsoft Entra alongside SAP Cloud Identity Services? The main thing that we want to emphasize here is twofold. First, SAP provides in Cloud Identity Services connections to many of the other SAP cloud applications, S/4HANA, as well as S/4HANA Private Cloud, Ariba, Concur, all the SAP SaaS applications. For Microsoft Entra, we of course have provisioning and single sign-on integrations with many other non-SAP target systems, on-premises apps, cloud apps, as well as the Microsoft systems themselves. So an organization that wants to orchestrate what happens when someone joins your organization, we get a new hire, maybe they're in SuccessFactors or some other source for contractors. We bring them in, we set them up. They can access Active Directory, they can access on-premises apps. We can send them over to SAP Cloud Identity Services so that then they have that single sign-on ability over in S/4HANA, as well as all the other applications in the environment. So if you go through this document, you'll see, for example, a list of partners. When we publish the documentation, a number of the existing SAP IDM partners wanted to let you know that they're ready to help you go on the journey. If you had SAP IDM, perhaps a partner helped you with the deployment or is helping you on your SAP modernization or your identity modernization, these are some of the partners that have already been working with us on that migration. It's not limited to these. We have more partners as well that can help with other aspects of SAP integration, SAP migration. In addition to the partners, we have a quick table of scenarios. What do organizations use SAP IDM for? And then where are the equivalent or similar Microsoft Entra capabilities? Now you'll probably say, oh yes, I looked at that document, Mark, but it's missing my favorite scenario. What about all that Java code that I wrote? What's the equivalent of that? Where's compliant provision? Where's all these other things that I was using in virtual directory? So don't worry, this is still evolving. Earlier this year, we got a lot of feedback from partners, from customers by DSAG on what they wanted to see in the migration. And we're continuing to evolve this. We have partners and customers that were giving us feedback all the time. What are the other scenarios that they want to see next? So we're going to keep updating this document for the next couple of months as we get more guidance, more scenarios that we want to go cover. Yes, customers say, where do I put my Java code? Microsoft, do you even have a place for Java code? Do you even know what Java is? I thought you're a .NET company. Don't worry, we understand Java. I was a Java programmer once myself, and so we have a strategy for Java. As we go and work with customers and partners on figuring out what migration scenarios work, we're going to keep updating and adding this to the content. So what you'll see in many of these sections, if you go through, read it, it's a long document, many of these link out to specific step-by-step guidance. So one that we put out earlier this year is about SAP Source and SAP Target. Because a lot of organizations are doing something very straightforward. I've got my workers in HCM or SuccessFactors. I want to give them mailboxes. I want to give them access to SAP applications. That's it. Great. Here's what you have to go do. So this walks through checklist style, everything you need to do for covering that. But of course, some customers are doing more than that. They're doing what's called the compliant provisioning scenario. They want to integrate for role management and requests beyond that provisioning. So we'll be adding that content as well. Now, the other thing that we want to emphasize as we look at this migration content is not only are we doing this for SAP, because obviously SAP is a big application in the environment, but to help organizations get a better handle on everything else in their environment. This is one of the things that we think is really important about the move to cloud services, because we saw customers put in identity management products 5-10 years ago. And it could be SAP IDM, could be MIM, could be something else. And what we saw with a lot of those on-premises products is they kind of stagnated. You put a product in there and you connected it to your 5 applications, but then you ran out of time, ran out of budget, consultants went away, integrators went away, and that's all you had. Meanwhile, the number of applications in the organization just kept growing and growing and growing, and that indicated a risk. What happens if there's business critical applications that didn't connect to the identity management system, that had manual account creation, and then someone leaves, they forget to turn off an account in that system? Well, that obviously indicates a risk. So one of the things that we see organizations really getting the value from Microsoft Entra and SAP is not just from the SAP side, but the ability to easily connect to lots of other applications. Oh yes, we have Salesforce, or we have ServiceNow, or we have something else as well. Can we tie that in as well so that when people join, they get accounts, they have single sign-on, when they leave, we turn them off? The other thing that, again, a lot of SAP organizations are really familiar with, but for other applications, how do we move not just to automatic provisioning, but be able to use these stronger security mechanisms for single sign-on? Password, login, kind of reach the end of life. We want to move organizations to using more secure methods for authentication, at least multi-factor authentication, be able to use features like conditional access and so on. So that's why a lot of the basic capabilities like being able to provision people in applications, be able to use conditional access, these are in our down level SKUs. And Entra ID P1, a lot of organizations have E3, kind of the down level basic SKUs for email. They have rights to all this because we want an organization to be able to get secure, stay secure, be able to have single sign-on provisioning to everything in their environment. And then they can keep building up more things over time. So key thing to keep in mind for this. One, when you think about migrating off of SAP IDM, Great. You can move your scenarios. We're going to have guidance for that. 2, what are the applications in your environment that you didn't have connected to SAP IDM? If there's a SAP application, Chris and his friends and all these partners can help you with that. If there's a non-SAP application, yeah, we want you to connect to those as well. We want all the applications integrated. SAP, non-SAP, make sure there's a user lifecycle, make sure there's strong multi-factor passwordless or phishing-resistant authentication for all your applications. And even for applications that have no interface as well. So one thing that, just to kind of veer off topic for a minute, but since I have control of the screen, I'll do that. Be able to emphasize the breadth of integrations is really, really important to me. Because people have always said, oh, Mark, this AAD thing, this Entra thing, it's just for the Microsoft apps, right? No, it's for everything. Oh, but it's just for the cloud apps, right? No, it's for everything. Well, it's just for the cloud and on-prem apps that do modern protocols. No, it's for everything. Well, what if I've got the system, the AIX system in the closet, and it doesn't have any SCIM, it doesn't have any SOAP, doesn't have any SSO. What about all those systems? So we've been, again, continue to add more capabilities. Like in Entra Suite, we've added private access, the ability to go and say, yeah, you got weird things on your network, manufacturing systems, things that you just want to firewall off and gate access to. You don't have like everyone getting access, but you don't have the ability to do provisioning or single sign-on. Yes, we have control mechanisms for that as well. So lots of other guidance is going to keep coming to this content about how to go beyond just the the SAP and the MART integrations to be able to reach all your apps as well. But again, let's stop talking about those things and bring it back to what you all care about, which is SAP. So this diagram was in the blog post, went out back in February, and we're going to keep updating this. And this has a lot of what you'd come to expect. So over here on the left side, we have our Microsoft Entra, identity management, identity provider, and we have the kind of integrations you'd expect. SAML, OIDC, OpenID Connect, SCIM, which is how we're going to provision users from Entra into SAP Cloud Identity so that they can go out to all the SAP cloud systems as well. But in addition to this, if you've been watching carefully, you'll see there's this other really weird line down here. It goes from Microsoft Entra down, kind of hiding the bottom of the screen, connects over to SAP Cloud Identity Access Governance. Now, a lot of people didn't see this when they first put out this blog post, but this is in fact the most important line in the picture, because what this is illustrating is some of the new capabilities that we're going to be bringing together as part of this Microsoft SAP partnership. So Chris, what is this line for?
Well, that line really leads to a very interesting set of use cases and scenarios that we've been working on. And unfortunately, it's kind of buried in this diagram. As a matter of fact, I've got that presentation slide up here. I'm clicking it back and forth. Oh, it's only the one line is different. But those are a set of APIs that we're working on together between Microsoft and SAP to enable a broad set of scenarios to help you govern access across your business applications using Microsoft Entra. As you know today, like SAP customers have a lot of specific requirements around, who gets access and, whether there's an SOD risk involved or, is that access, is there some sort of validity date or something involved in that? And so here we're trying to really make these systems a whole lot simpler and more secure by connecting Microsoft Entra with SAP Cloud Identity Access Governance. And some of the key scenarios involve integrating or synchronizing the business roles that are defined in IAG, because those business roles help actually create and define what activities are involved in business processes. Are there SOD risks involved in completing that provisioning action, or how do you handle if there is a risk? Do you change the request? Do you try to pick something else to assign to the user? So these kinds of scenarios are incredibly complex when you're trying to connect Microsoft Entra with SAP. How do you handle these different kinds of cases? And so we have a number of activities planned to help kind of resolve these over the next few months. And I think Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the first set of scenarios we're planning on basic integration with Entra ID using existing interfaces prior to end of the year.
Yeah, because we want to get customers, helping us to validate and build out this integration. So we're starting with what we have today. We have a lot of existing capabilities. We built integration with Microsoft Entra with other GRC systems. But we want to also tie this into SAP Cloud Identity Access Governance and help customers give us feedback. What should we go and build out next? If we can show you this initial integration, where should we go with access recertification, risk analysis, cross-app SOD? There's so many ways we could take this partnership. So we see that getting our first toehold out there will allow more validation and get more feedback. Where do organizations want to go with that consistent identity and access governance?
But then, Mark, Chris, just to step in here and reconfirm basically. So the initial announcement read like we, SAP Microsoft, will provide guidance to the customer on how to migrate to Entra ID, which is already great. But actually what we are doing here is we are really enhancing both of our products to work much better together. So something that is not yet available today, this is where we are really doing almost like a co-development, co-engineering, where we are developing something on the Microsoft side, something on the SAP side, where we look what are the APIs, what are the missing functionalities to really make this happen, to really address customers' concerns where they are saying, yeah, this is nice, but this and that functionality is still missing. That is something where we are really also investing from a development perspective.
Right. Even in addition to organizations that had SAP IDM, we have organizations like, well, I never had SAP IDM in the first place. Does this have anything of value? Yeah, we see there's a lot of value to getting that consistent identity and access governance, even if you didn't have a migration path, even just starting fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly, Holger. I mean, you can kind of think of it as two aspects to this. So one is sort of a tactical element around finding an alternative for SAP customers that are running SAP IDM. So so that is that's more of a tactical kind of a tactical activity. But the real strategy is involved with combining Microsoft Entra and the tools that do access governance within SAP. So SAP Cloud Identity Access Governance and SAP Access Control. SAP Access Control is really widely deployed amongst SAP customers. And SAP Access Control, I mean, it is a solution for access governance. However, it is really handling a set of problems that are specific to the domain around application access control. So it's handling the SOD risk. It's creating sort of business roles and very specific for the SAP applications, where Entra is really supporting a broad set of scenarios around, user lifecycle management and identity governance and risk scenarios. So by joining these two things together, we kind of get the best of both worlds, hopefully, and that we'll be able to run a combination of these access governance scenarios for applications specifically using Entra, the beautiful UIs and capabilities with Entra, user lifecycle management, all the interfaces, the access packages, and so forth. So, in a sense, many organizations have multiple silos that are all handling different kinds of specific elements of, access governance or identity and access governance capabilities. And so I think we'll ultimately make this a whole lot simpler, maybe even eliminate or reduce the kind of silos that many of our organizations have to deal with. So, we're really excited about the future with this integration.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think, a lot of customers already have SAP and Microsoft in place anyways. They are a big SAP shop. They have their S/4HANA system. They use a lot of tools, and similar, they have a big bet on Microsoft. They have Windows, they have Entra ID, or formerly called Azure Active Directory, now Entra ID, already in place. And for them, I guess it can be really a natural fit to use Entra ID now as a replacement for SAP IDM. But I guess, and SAP has always been very, very good when it came to customization, to extending solutions. So I'm sure a lot of customers have done a lot of interesting modifications also with this, and it's great to hear that that both of our companies are really working on listening to customers' feedback, and then potentially, I mean, I guess we cannot address all the feature requests that come from customers, but at least we can consolidate, we can cluster, we can triage, and see then what can both of our companies do to make these integrations even better than what is available today.
It's a great comment, and Mark and I and our colleagues, Microsoft and SAP colleagues, we're jointly involved with validation sessions with our customers. And you said correctly, I mean, I think almost every SAP customer is running Entra, right? So we have a huge number of customers to draw upon for validation, but going through and listening to how they're implementing, or how they have implemented SAP IDM and access control, and kind of walking through the different scenarios has been a very interesting process.
Perfect, and maybe that's a fantastic bridge to Jannis. You represent here basically the voice of the customer, I would say. I mean, I'm a huge fan of DSAG. I'm also very active in DSAG, and for me as a product manager, DSAG is always a fantastic vehicle to get feedback, to validate some of the things that I might think of as a product manager. And that's why I'm super thankful that we found you, or I mean, Martin and the team, they already knew you obviously from the past, but I think it's really fantastic that you are part of this initiative basically, and that you help us develop here really a better product. So maybe you can share a little your insights on how you see this Entra and SAP IDM migration.
Yes, for all our viewers who are not aware what DSAG stands for, it's the German SAP user group, so like the ASAG, and we have different streams there. Since we've heard that identity management is going out of maintenance, we have one stream taking care of all involvement of the SAP Cloud Identity Services. Customers also have questions there, how they're able to connect systems, for example. Then we have one stream dealing about migration to third-party tools overall. So how to migrate IDM to other third-party vendors. Yes, and we have one stream where the DSAG lead for the working group, how SAP and Microsoft are working together. And yeah, I was leading the identity management program in the past, so my part is playing the devil's advocate a little bit to tell both groups what's good and what's missing. So as I said, customers have a lot of questions, how they're able to integrate or migrate from identity management to Microsoft Entra, and we want to help. We want to streamline all the questions customers have, that it's easier for Microsoft to answer these questions, and that we get a nice migration or a product at the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because so I think it's
we had already different meetings in the past. So since in November we've had the official information that IDM is going out of maintenance. Then we had the DSAG meeting in February in Hamburg, where the official communication took place that Microsoft will take over, more or less. And then we had different virtual meetings between Microsoft, SAP, and myself, or DSAG, to have a look on the documentation and customer feedback.
And Jannis, I think it's also quite interesting the service that you did in the context of the DSAG, right? I mean, you asked your members about their perspective on Entra and what they think it is and what it is not, and I think that also clearly showed that there's a lot to do for all of us in this round in terms of educating our joint customers here that, for example, Entra is a little bit more than just an authentication service. Yeah, I think that was one of the, at least for me, one of the key learnings from those surveys that you thankfully did in the Arbeitskreis IAM, that most of the members there still had the perspective on Entra formerly Azure AD, being a more or less purely authentication service in the cloud, and actually wasn't really aware about identity lifecycle management capabilities, etc. And I think that was at least one of my key learnings, from.
Yes, exactly. For example, that you are able to design workflows in Entra ID. This is not customers are not aware of this, and that you have a very powerful provisioning engine. So all this information must go out to the customers. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so just to emphasize, you're just representing a lot of different customers and partners that are part of your specific work stream, and that's where you have the possibility to consolidate this customers and partners feedback and share it with us, share it with Mark, with Chris, and the team, so that we can then learn and say, oh, this is something that comes up very often, so we should look into this. We should add this feature in our integration.
Exactly. We have a nice platform where we are able to consolidate everything and gather feedback, for example, so that all our life is, or your work is getting simpler. Yeah, indeed.
Cool. Yeah. Nice. Well, so we, Martin, you mentioned that we already have a few customers, that we worked with a few customers. I think, I mean, I also participated in one of the sessions, a long session where the customer provided a lot of details. Can you maybe share a little the feedback of these customers? Is there already something that we can share, or are we too early?
Yeah. Well, I think the selection of the customers so far was, we are right now specifically working with 2 pilot customers, that are, first of all, made from their perspective the clear decision to go with Entra, so to migrate from their existing SAP IDM solution to Entra. And the first customer is probably using SAP IDM today in a, let's say, they certainly make use of the customization features, but they do not use them to the very last extent. So that I think was important for us also to understand to which degree customers may use the tool or may not. And but we also have the second pilot customer. So both, by the way, German companies make, I think, much more extensive use of these customization features. And but I think it's important for us at the moment to get a very good and detailed understanding of the spectrum, that we see here in the installed customer base here, for how much they make use of those, because in the end those customizations, I think, to a large extent define first of all the efforts that need to be taken into a migration, and also the requirements to the migrations. And we may find places where we simply today maybe not be able to find a feature or solution that can be used to migrate a scenario. Well, then sometimes maybe those customers may need also to rethink their existing solution and may also redesign their solution, or if it makes perfect sense what they have in place today, but there is no feature available on the Entra side to provide a solution for migration, then certainly it's the point where we need to address that to the product teams on both sides, and ask for support and feature development here and co-engineering. Yes, So and we are at the moment really in the beginning of getting this deep understanding. Holger, as you said, we had a very long session with this, let's say, normal IDM customer just recently, and we plan to have a second session with the more advanced customer. So I think that's also something that will be ongoing in the next few weeks and months.
Well, SAP IDM is ultimately flexible because it's based on on the scripting capability that is, I mean, customers, they can use it for just about anything. So I'm sure we'll find customers who are implementing certain customizations which may not be consistent with best practices. And so, like you said, Martin, that is something to be considered. One thing I think about when I look at Entra, as a product manager, I look across and I'm like, I dream of certain features. I wish we had this. I wish we had, this sort of concept of access packages. I mean, the fact that you can automate assignment through rules and policies and so forth. I'm like, that is exactly what so many of our SAP customers would love to adopt. And so, there's certain things that I kind of personally like to focus on, and I think just bringing the full depth and breadth of Entra and combining it with our access governance capabilities is just going to be enormously successful and hopefully result in significant improvements across the board in terms of security, risk, and compliance capabilities.
It must also be clear that Entra ID is not for every customer who was using IDM in the past. So if a customer decides not to have his primary focus of identity centralization in the cloud, well, then Entra ID, for example, is not an option for him. So for all over 1,000 customers we have, they all have to decide.
Yep.
But I believe, there are so many scenarios that you can cover and integration points. Plus, Entra is a cloud service. I always love to say it. You don't need to manage it, which is great. Can the customer go in the phases? So implement certain scenarios. Okay, it works. Still have some other stuff for the other solution, for the other stuff, and then also by learning and getting confidence, expand it gradually, so to say. No need to do a big bang, right?
Exactly.
You just carry for the customer, right?
Yeah, doing a big migration for anything, especially things that touch core SAP business application workloads, have compliance implications, have availability implications. So many organizations, they're taking this year, sometimes even next year, just to plan out what their migration look like. What phases do they want to do that, and to make sure that they're lined up. They have the partners engaged, they have the timing set up, they know what's available, what they can migrate, and when they want to do it, that aligns to when is their business cycles, when do they need to make sure they're available for, for customer holiday sales or whatever their industry is lined up for. And so, yes, we see many organizations are taking a phased approach. Many are familiar with the single sign-on capabilities. They know Active Directory. So they're starting with the things that are most familiar to them. Other customers are saying, well, we have key compliance gaps. So we're going to focus on filling the compliance gaps, things that an auditor flagged as a potential finding. We need to go after those first, and we'll go deal with other scenarios later. Others say, oh, the thing we care about most is risk of authentication breaches. That's where we want to go focus, and what do we need to do in order to make sure we have those risks under control. So we see many organizations are looking to approach migration differently. Some may tie it to an overall, hey, as we're going to S/4HANA, as we're going to SuccessFactors, as we're going to SAP ID, let's bring identity with it. And others are saying, hey, identity is a scenario migration of its own that may be decoupled at a different schedule from, say, moving ERP from R3 to S/4HANA.
Great. Yeah.
That makes total sense. So maybe just to also wrap it up, maybe if we have some customers listening to or watching this show now, and they say, well, that's actually pretty cool. I want to learn more, or I want to get engaged, or maybe I have started with the migration, but I have some feature requests. Then as we learned, DSAG is very active. So I guess if I have some questions, I would just reach out to Jannis or the DSAG group. What should I do if I'm in the US? If I don't have access to DSAG? What would be the best way to engage?
Yeah, so as we put onto the blog post from Microsoft into the Learn Guidance, we also have many other partners that have global coverage. So beyond the German-speaking regions, we have US partners on, and then of course many customers already have SAP account teams, they have Microsoft account teams. So any one of those four paths. DSAG, if you're part of DSAG, great forum. If you're not, if you have a partner you like working with, like a consulting firm, start with them. They probably have an SAP practice. Perfect. Otherwise, SAP or Microsoft or your local account teams can help you get to the right people.
Fantastic. Mark, I think this is a perfect closing word. So now everyone knows what to do. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of you to take your time for joining us, for presenting this really interesting topic. I'm sure we'll have you again, maybe in a year from now or whatever, when we see a little more customers already using this live, or maybe when we can also talk about some additional features and functionalities that we have there. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, I really hope to see you again.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.